started making ceramics in high school and went to Alfred University as an undergraduate student. I then got a residency at the Mendocino Art Center, which lasted for a year. I then worked on Wayne Higby's Earth Cloud installation crew before moving back to Rochester to help create a small community ceramics center called the Turk Hill Craft School in Fairport. And I also worked as a production metal worker for 3 years before going back to college, graduate school at Alfred University again. And at this point, having graduated and received my master's, I teach at Roberts Wesleyan College in Chi-Li, New York, and I also work at the Genesee Center for the Arts as a studio manager. As I said, I was a professional metal worker, and there's something about the process of working in a metal studio where you're not reliant on one thing. I'm not reliant on using the wheel solely anymore. Because in a metal shop, you weld the thing, then you walk over, you have to grind the thing, then you have to bend the thing. There's a very exaggerated process that is more focused on you making use of every tool to develop a specific thing, as opposed to pottery, specifically on the wheel, where you're making a thing that is only relevant to what you can do on the wheel. My process is very elaborate. I seem to use every different type of ceramic process and put them together. So I throw things on the wheel. I then make a mold from that. I then dissect the mold, cut them into little components, stick them back together, and make a mold from that. And then I use very elaborate colored porcelains together inside that mold. And I think that what's most important about the process for me is the ability to use everything for what it does well. Using the wheel to revolve a form, but then using the mold to arrive at color and surface in a way that I could never have achieved with the wheel alone. So these two processes complement each other. I've often said that I make anachronistic objects. I make objects of personal luxury in a digital age. So I think that function, or putting together the idea of a set of functional objects, is paramount to some sort of narrative that I'm creating. Now, to expand on that, I make very specific things that are historically relevant objects. I make perfume bottles, jewelry boxes, scotch decanters, urns and cups. They are functional. They do work. However, I don't think that they're often used. But I'm not making work necessarily for the aristocracy. I'm making it about the aristocracy, but I'm making it in reference also to our culture, which has so much to do with color. And so in order to make that work, I need the blue to be blue, and I need it to be bright blue, because those are the sorts of things that you see in the clothing that surrounds you. I'm working on a series of very elaborate jewelry boxes and perfume bottles that sit on top of them. And in order to truly understand those forms, I use Rhino, which is a CAD geometry program, so that I can create a form in the round in digital space, and I can dissect it and put it back together so that I know exactly what it's going to look like. And the execution, which takes a fair amount of time between throwing the thing and putting it into the mold, is not lost. Well, I spend a lot of time being overly concerned with people's viewpoint of me being over technical and having too much to do with process and too little to do with concept. And at one point I just stopped and said, absolutely, technique is essential to me. And if it's not essential to you, then I can't help you. But I think that that's a very important part of making ceramics, is understanding technique. But I think that really with ceramics, it's an act of living. And with all art form, generally, it's an act of living through a material. Musicians do the same thing. And you need to have that prolonged exposure to a material to really get it, right? If I spent 2 hours a day doing this, talking about this and working through this, I wouldn't get it. So to spend 12 hours a day to comfortably do that and to celebrate it and enjoy it is the only way that you're going to start to understand exactly what you make and how to make it. Just make a lot of stuff. I don't know.
Is that the most important thing you could offer students?
Yeah, you know, that's an extremely silly thing to say. Is just make a lot of stuff, but it is so important. If you are passionate and you can just look into if it's technique that gets you, if it's ideas that get you, if you can just go forward with that, it's all going to start to gel when you just invest. And the less you sit around thinking about making, the more you're actively making, the more you're problem solving, the faster your mind's getting, the more in tune your proportions are becoming, and the more successful I believe you can be. So work hard.